Thank you for joining us back here. We are Just Conspiracy. And whenever things like this are going on with Alan, with Philip Kemp, with Angela Freiner, and others, I'm kind of having a campaign on this channel to really try and sound the alarm that, hey, everybody, we are going to lose our rights really, really quickly if we don't do something about it. He who does not exercise his rights has none. An attorney cannot exercise your rights for you because you're not the one exercising the rights, which means you don't have any. We know this very simply because in law, representation of persons is a fiction of the law. And also, to challenge the jurisdiction, you have to be in your proper person. That's called impropria persona. An attorney is not a proper person. An attorney, the only type of jurisdiction that they can argue is territorial and subject matter. Whether the court has territorial or subject matter jurisdiction over the case, and now that's what they try and tell you, that's the only thing that exists. Now, there are a group of people out there called sovereign citizens. And on the internet, they like to arrest them, beat them up, and take them to jail. Now, I'm not saying that they shouldn't do that to some of them because some of them are absolutely insane. But I've been requested to make a video about sovereign citizens. This is the video about sovereign citizens. And next time, I'm going to do one about what I believe the true sovereign citizens to be, and that is the judicial officers, and show you how unequally the law is applied to these two different groups for the actions they commit in society and the crimes that they perpetrate on people. Let's get into it.
He was charged with making terrorist threats, assault with a deadly weapon, and obstructing peace officers after a domestic disturbance escalated into a 2-day police standoff.
Sir, is this an maritime admiralty law courtroom that we're processing me through?
No, it's not.
All courtrooms in this country are maritime admiralty law courtrooms that process people, aren't they?
No, sir.
This courtroom is...
Let me just explain this real quick to everybody, because this is a big belief among the sovereign citizen crowd, is that all the courtrooms are maritime admiralty courtrooms. That is not correct. Mainly because, well, most states are landlocked and they can't be maritime admiralty courtrooms because that deals with the law of the sea. And you can't exactly have a courtroom dealing with the law of the sea if you ain't got no sea to deal with the law with. You see? Now, the reason people believe this is because during the Revolutionary War, the British powers usurped maritime admiralty jurisdiction to infringe on the procedures and processes of common law. That's where this idea comes from, but it's an absolute false idea, and I'm pretty sure the only people who are peddling it on a very serious level are counterintelligence programs from the government, which is why they seem to get tens of thousands of views, and people send them all sorts of money, but nobody listens to me. And I can't get more than 100 views on my channel in a day. I don't know why. Seems pretty silly unless the government and the NSA are just fudging a bunch of stuff. And I have really good reason to believe that they make a very concerted effort to keep us from communicating with one another. And to keep people from listening to this because, well, it's just the truth and it's the only way we're going to get out of any of this mess. But all of that to say, the courtrooms in America are not maritime admiralty. They are civil law courtrooms unless you actually understand and know and have the education to exercise due process of law. And we are getting to the point where they just don't care. And that's a real problem. And they're going to come and take everything you have, all of your property, and destroy your family if you don't care either. I digress. Let's keep watching.
Process me as state property. See this fictitious name statement? Asher Edwards, spelled in all capital letters. This is not my name.
Okay. Here's another great example, and we will actually have a little series on this after this guy. I was just showing this guy because of how much of an absolute moron he is, and to give a good example, this is what you absolutely don't do. People like this make the sovereign citizen movement look bad, because even though they have not very good arguments, most of them aren't criminals. They're not breaking the law. But people like this who have a 2-day standoff with the police, that act violently, they make everybody else look really bad. And you want to know what they call that? They call that prejudice and bias. When you have one bad experience with a moron like this and you project it onto everybody else. But this is what I call the name game. Look, if your best argument to the court is, that's not my name. Okay, I don't care. In fact, in common law, I don't have to know your name to come and get you and sue you. I just have to be able to verify that it was you when the court drags you in and I see you. That's it. But the name game is stupid.
Even allows the defendant to finish his rant.
Therefore, it is illegal for you to process me through this courtroom, so you guys have to figure out something else to do with it.
Court will enter a not guilty plea on your behalf. Will show time is not waived. We'll set this matter for pre-preliminary hearing within the statutory period.
Asher Edwards would later be found guilty of all the charges and sentenced to 1 year in prison.
Okay, did you hear him say, we will set this for a preliminary hearing within the statutory time period? That's how you know it's a civil law court right there. It's because it moves under statutes, it doesn't move under law. Boom. It's that easy. So, I believe the judicial officer was absolutely correct. He entered a not guilty plea on his behalf because the gentleman was acting so moronically, he had no clue what elements and points of law actually were, that the judicial officer, in law, from my own account, in law, had the duty and the obligation to create him as a ward of the court and help him out by pleading not guilty on his behalf. That's basically what just happened there. Now let's get into situations. I'm going to have some fun with this.
Hall is here for driving under the influence and driving with a suspended license. Peterson is a hearing for a minor traffic infraction, riding his bicycle at night without a light.
So I'm going to go through a couple of things, and this is kind of set up in subject matter. So it will go by subject matter. If both of these people are about to try and play the name game, it doesn't work out for either one of them. I also wish for you to notice this man is charged for driving a bicycle without a light. The other one was charged for driving under suspension and DUI, I believe. And DUI is one of those things where, even though it's not technically a breaking of the law, it's a disturbance of the peace, and it's reckless endangerment. People get arrested for it. Don't try and use common law ways out of it unless you actually were unlawfully arrested for DUI. Just my opinion.
What's your first and last name?
I don't have a last name.
You don't have a last name?
No.
See? Again,
What's your
name
first
game. I don't have a
First
name.
name either. I've got a name. My name is Robert. You can call me Robert.
As you can see, this bailiff keeps his sense of humor about the situation.
What are you? Are you human?
I'm a man.
You're human?
I'm a man, yes.
I see your Idaho state license.
No, I don't have one.
You don't have one?
My person does, but I don't.
He's playing the name game. He doesn't have one. His person has one. And I'm going to guarantee you right now, he does not have one. The state of Idaho has one. The state of Idaho has one with his name on it. But since he doesn't have a name, he doesn't have one. But it's really confusing because his person has one. You see how stupid this name game is?
I appear here today as the settler agent, not the person, but the individual. And I don't think I should. You understand the difference between a person and an individual.
And you're the individual, but you're not the person. Is that correct?
Correct. Correct.
I'm going to write that down. Here's what we.
I absolutely love that. I find it hilarious. You're the settler. You're the individual. You're the agent, but you're not the person. Is that correct? Yeah. Well, hate to inform you, the settler, the agent, the person, and the individual are all persons. They are all different types of persons. So again, if I were this judicial officer, I'd be like, what's he talking about? Is he insane? Obviously, he doesn't know what's going on, so I'm going to have to help him through this process. But he's even a little more amusing about it. Let's watch.
Going to do the settler, the agent, the individual, and maybe even the person, David Hall, has been charged with DUI. So today, the court's going to set the settler, the agent, the individual's bond, and even the person's bond today at $10,000 because the settler, the agent, the individual, and the person continues to drive without a driver's license. Both cases will cause the settler, the agent, the individual, and even the person, David Hall, not to be able to be released from the Broward County Jail until further notice of the court. So,
may I post bond, sir?
Well,
is there any other?
Are you asking me as the settler, the agent, the individual, or are you asking me as the person?
Sir, I'm asking as the individual appearing before you today, the
Wait,
opportunity.
who are you speaking on behalf of right now?
Sir, I don't understand that question. I believe that you're trying to confuse.
See? He just confirmed that he doesn't understand what he's talking about. Because the judicial officer's asking him a pretty simple question. He's saying, which person am I talking to right now? Am I talking to the settler, the agent, the individual? Well, I don't know. I think you're trying to confuse me. Yeah, maybe because you don't know what you're talking about. Because the entire reason I was able to just run over you the way that I did was because you have no clue what you were talking about, and I decided to have some fun with it. And remember, he said, you're driving without a license. Keep that in mind. He's driving without a license.
Me now. I'm not the person, sir.
Okay,
I am
see
not
the
the
person, David Hall. Tell him he's not leaving jail either, all right? Have a nice day. Thank you.
If you see the person, David Hall, if you just happen to see him, tell him he's not going anywhere either. That's pretty funny. That's pretty funny. Because I say all the time, you gotta be a paranoid schizophrenic with multiple personality disorders to understand what's actually going on. Because you have multiple persons. You have at least as many persons as you have emotions. Because you can be an angry person, you can be a happy person, you can be a sad person. And then, after that, you can start adding on different persons. Like, let's get into legal persons, like your Visa person, MasterCard person, banking person, your driver's license person, but it's not your driver's license person, but the state's driver's license person, that they try to get you to contractually create joinder with. That's what's really going on. It's not that hard, but you really, really have to understand multiple personalities because person literally comes from the word persona. Let's see what's about to happen. We're going to have that crazy guy again who is playing the name. I don't have a name. My person has the license, but I don't.
Peterson is a hearing for a minor traffic infraction, riding his bicycle at night without a light. When a bailiff tells 36-year-old Jenna Vondran to stop.
Okay, and some of this kind of skips around a little bit. So this has to do with the marijuana case. We'll get back to Peter in just a minute.
Filming on her cell phone.
Show me the law.
Wait. My bad. This section has to do with filming. Because that kid who went into court for riding a bicycle without a light, which is a retarded charge anyways, he shows up in this like 3 times. Anyways, this is about filming. Let's check it out.
Show me the law.
In Kentucky, judges are given broad discretion on allowing filming in their courtrooms.
This is my property. Show me the law.
All right.
Show me the law.
Chris?
Show me the law.
Chris?
Show me the law.
Go ahead and lock her up.
Show me the law.
Go ahead and take her into custody.
Watch as the judge looks down and presses his panic button to summon additional deputies to the courtroom.
What are you doing? There's no right. You have no right.
You sit over there. Nothing
You
wrong.
have no right. No right for that.
Yeah, I'm not finished with her yet.
Enter bailiff number 2.
Shut the camera off now.
No, thank you. I do not consent to you touching me or seizing my property, so you need to
Shut
back
the
up.
camera off now.
I'm not doing anything wrong.
Yes, you
I'm
are.
holding you accountable because you're about to overstep your bounds.
The bailiffs then decide to clear the courtroom and question Peterson directly.
Please step aside. I'm going in.
No, you're not going in.
Don't touch me.
You're not going in, sir.
Let the record show that you just battered me
Step back.
and you're using...
Step back.
You're using... Stop, please. I'm not doing anything wrong. Hey, you know what? You guys are really overstepping your bounds right now.
Put the cuffs on him.
Put the cuffs on. What are you arresting me for?
As for Jenna Vondran, who was arrested after filming in the courtroom,
All right. Go ahead and lock her up.
Alright, let me tell you something here. The Supreme Court has ruled numerous times that in public spaces, you do not have the expectation of privacy and you can be recorded. If people do not record courts, they end up becoming star chambers. When they're talking about it's illegal to record a court and you have to get the judge's permission, that is for the media. That only applies to the media. When people do not watch the courts, they become lawless. They become tyrannical very quickly. And if you don't understand that, then I guess you believe we still live in a free country. I guess you believe that them talking about forcing a vaccine on you, talking about forcing masks on you, all of that's okay because, I mean, apparently somebody in court said it was okay, and they appear to be gods because they're functioning under statutes, fake idols. Governments throughout the entire history of mankind have been usurping God's authority, the Creator's authority. If people do not watch courtrooms, they become tyrannical, and we are already past that point when you see somebody getting arrested for asking if they're a slave. And if you think somehow you're magically special and the court is magically going to make law appear because you're walking in there, good luck, and let me know how that turns out for you. Maybe these people aren't the brightest people in the world. Are you? Are you the smartest individual? In my opinion, it is wrong to tase somebody for recording court. It is wrong to arrest somebody for watching public officers perform public duties. And the Supreme Court has agreed with that, and yet nobody does anything about cameras in the courtroom. Now, with that being said, because you see what's going on in the courts, and it's going to get even worse the next time when we're looking at judges. If I were you, I would record the court all of the time. I would have multiple recorders, and that way, if they catch one, you got 5 more backing it up. And everybody who just goes into court to watch, you should record it, because you never know when something is going to happen. And our society is so far gone with knowing and understanding law in their heart that most people do not understand when judicial officers or the courts are breaking the law unless they are breaking it against them. And then everybody else is like, well, the court said it, you got to do it. It's not a suggestion, it's an order. You have to order your child to go with the child molester because the judge said so. Tell me something. If that's the way the world really works, then why do you say this is the land of the free and the home of the brave? You're lying. You are a liar if you believe they have the authority to do that to man and woman, God's creation, and you say that we're an open and free country that has rights. That's just my thought on recording court. People gotta keep recording court.
Drug paraphernalia, and tampering with physical evidence.
Come on up here, ma'am.
I would like to stand here.
When called upon, Johnson decides to address the judge, Sean Delahanty, from the back of the court.
No, you stand at this podium.
Awesome.
I
Can you
get,
tell me
Oh, ma'am, you have to come up here. We can't record
what
your
laws
back.
you guys operate under?
the laws of the state of Kentucky.
Yes. As in like amity law, criminal law, statutory.
Come up here and...
She's asking, she won't pass the podium. She won't pass the bar. She's asking, what laws are you operating under? He says, the laws of the state of Kentucky. No, he's operating under the statutes of the state of Kentucky. It's not law. He's acting under the policy of Kentucky, which, by all means, they have every single right to implement those statutes and those policies upon the people that work for them and signed up and agreed, hey, I'm going to be a member of your society. I'm joining the government. Give me a job and a position to do. Those are who the statutes actually apply to. Those are who the policies actually apply to. Again, she brought up something about maritime admiralty. She thinks it's a maritime admiralty courtroom. Don't refuse to pass the bar because of that. It's a silly argument. It shows the judicial officers that you have absolutely no clue what you're doing in law. Let's see what happens.
Stand at this podium. I have to get you on the record so that we can see you with your argument.
Okay, well, for on the record, I reserve my rights before crossing this bench.
Okay. Do not reserve your rights before crossing the bench. You want to know why? Because you are not exercising them if you are reserving them. If you tell a judicial officer that you are reserving your rights, that lets them know you're not exercising your rights, and so they can start violating your rights until you decide to take your rights out of being reserved and put them into the manner of execution. When you start performing your rights, it's really just that simple. And he goes ahead because he sees what's coming, and he's completely correct and in law doing this. He says he doesn't want to throw her in jail. That's where she's going.
Mr. Johnson, I really don't want to create some big scene.
Well,
Hang on a second. I do not want to lock you up, but I may very well have to. I need for you to come up here and stand at this podium.
I'll try to sit there. So
No, you cannot. No, you cannot. You have to come up here and stand at this podium.
Peterson is a hearing for a minor traffic infraction, riding his
is him
bicycle at
again.
night without a light.
And this section's kind of on due process.
It's clearly posted on the entrance building.
What, clearly posted that I have to forfeit my right to be free from unreasonable search and seizure?
Coming into this building.
Yeah, every person is. I'm not a person. I'm a man. I'm not subject to your jurisdiction, and the court has already confirmed that. I'm here for one purpose. All right.
You can submit or you can leave.
That's fine. I mean, I'll do that, but you will be charged a bill.
Okay, let me just go over this. He's saying that he's not subject to their jurisdiction. Well, he's in their building. The entire reason they have the security that they have at government buildings these days, it's been there all of our lifetimes, all of our parents' lifetimes, their parents' lifetimes, and it's because back in the late 1800s, the early 1900s, when the federal government was vastly expanding after the Civil War and usurping powers that originally belonged to the state, there was something called an anarchist movement in this country where they would literally bomb politicians' houses, bomb Wall Street. They bombed Wall Street and other governmental offices and buildings. There more or less was kind of a war in the streets. And that's why they have all of that security. Because if they didn't have that security, people in this country wouldn't put up with stuff. They would see the opportunity and become violent. Okay? But he's making the wrong argument about jurisdiction to the wrong people. He's talking to the police officers or the security guards that have absolutely nothing to do with this case, and he probably annoyed them immensely. The woman finally comes up to the podium for the marijuana charge, paraphernalia, and tampering with evidence, which is probably she was caught eating the marijuana whenever she was pulled over. I don't know what the case was, but that's just what I would imagine with those charges. So let's see how she moves under due process while she's doing this, because all of these examples, they're not moving, they're not using, they're not anywhere close to any type of due process, which is what allows the judicial officer the lawful rights, duties, and obligations to do what they do to them. And I feel like they get severely punished, and they just don't understand why. Whether it's right or wrong is really up for you to decide. But I just despise the argument that, oh, you have to do it because they're a judicial officer. When judicial officers have been caught breaking the law, violating the law in open, everybody saw it, we all see it, they write to the Bar Association and get everything dropped. When district attorneys get removed from office for being an accessory after the fact to child rape, and the legal society allows them to keep their bar license, when the people who are supposed to be upholding the law violate the law and due process and your right to due process so badly, the only argument they have are making fun of people who don't understand the law because it's not being taught in our society anymore, which is why our society appears so lawless. But let's see what her arguments in law are and the process that she moves forward with, because she actually starts off okay.
Charged with possession of marijuana, tampering with physical evidence, and possession of drug paraphernalia.
I don't understand any of that.
All right. Well, you're charged with illegally possessing marijuana. You are...
I don't understand any of those charges.
Okay, right there. She starts off with she doesn't understand any of those charges. See, at a point in time, like probably even 80 years ago, that would have worked. That would have been the end of it. But then everybody would have caught on real quick. So, in every single state, it's in their constitution that you have the right to understand the nature of the wrong and the cause of the accusation. Which means you have to understand the charges. Which is why they have to ask you, do you understand the charges? And most people in the sovereign citizen movement believe this means to stand under their authority. That is not what it means. It means, do you believe you did something wrong like we believe you did something wrong? And when you enter a plea of guilty or not guilty, you're saying that you do understand the charges, because otherwise you wouldn't try to defend yourself from them or ask forgiveness for doing them. Now, we are at a place in our society where it's so lawless, it's not just enough for you to say, I don't understand. You literally have to tell them why you do not understand the charges. And I'll give you an example because this is marijuana. I don't understand why grown adults would lock other grown adults up over a plant. And you can't make me understand that. So I do not understand the charges because I don't understand why grown adults would lock up other grown adults up over a plant. So if you can explain the logic of that to me, how if somebody just has a flower, they can be tackled, violently arrested, and thrown into prison for years just for having a flower. If you can explain how that causes some type of harm, injury, and or loss to somebody, which is wrong, it's wrong to cause harm, injury, and or some sort of loss, great. That's why courts exist. But if you can't explain that to me because I'm holding a flower, then no, I don't understand the charges. It's just an example.
Well, there's not a whole lot more. There's not a whole lot more I can do to try to explain to you.
Okay, let's start here. Can you guys prove jurisdiction? Prove jurisdiction, because I come in under common law. Prove your jurisdiction, that you have jurisdiction over me. Prove jurisdiction. A court cannot proceed until you guys prove jurisdiction. Show me your jurisdiction. Show me your law.
All right. All of our laws are codified in the Kentucky Revised Statute.
Show me jurisdiction. Show me the law.
Hey, here you go.
Okay, that doesn't prove that you have jurisdiction.
Okay, so what else? Now, there's a simple way for me to prove jurisdiction to you. I'm going to ask the deputy to go ahead and take you into custody.
Under what charges?
Under
what charges?
You are disrupting my court.
Prove jurisdiction. Okay, well, since you have not moved out of a civil law process, you're still moving under their civil law because you haven't exercised your rights. You haven't performed your rights and they're still in reserve. I'm going to go ahead and tell you he has jurisdiction. The way he proves jurisdiction is by having her violently arrested and thrown in jail after you can hear the woman screaming in the background because she was violently arrested and thrown in jail simply for recording what was going on. That's way worse than having a flower, a plant. Or, wait, no. Having a plant is way worse than violently forcing somebody's body into submission and throwing them into a cage. Obviously, because that's what our society allows to happen day in and day out, every single day in these courtrooms. But when we have real legitimate crimes to report, they don't have a court for us. They won't allow us to access a court of law. But, we're the criminals because we believe we're free. What she had to do was she had to move under a common law jurisdiction. You can't just say it's a common law jurisdiction, common law rights. She doesn't know enough of what she's talking about. And this is why my people suffer, is for a lack of knowledge. The year that they abolished slavery, every single state in this union created a correction system, a prison system. It was the new form of slavery. And now they arrest people for pretended offenses like having a flower in their possession. And everybody's okay with it because nobody alive at this point has ever known anything else. But if you believe them doing this to her, that they're justified doing this to her because she had a flower in her possession, I guess you didn't read the first page of the Bible where God said that he put every plant and seed on this earth for our consumption and use. I guess you think God is a moron for creating a plant like marijuana, and that the government must protect us from his idiocracy and lock us up for making free will choices in which he gave us as his most precious gift to give to mankind. Free will. Because that's the logic I come to conclude if you think that this is okay and her possessing a flower is not.
All right, we're going to pass her case to tomorrow.
Just being mistreated is wrong under common law, under the United States Constitution.
Now we're about to get into arrests, because everybody gets arrested.
Keisha Johnson's arrested
especially
and charged with contempt of court.
exercising this stuff.
In New Hampshire, court is currently in recess.
This is how you get arrested, and then I'm going to explain what he did wrong. But please pay attention. If you are going to get arrested and you did not violate the law, and they don't have a sworn statement from the accuser with first-hand knowledge of the facts, not a witness, an accuser, the person you actually caused harm, injury, and or loss to, who has jurisdiction over you because you did something atrocious to them, then it's an unlawful arrest. And I do not promote violence. I'm at peace with all mankind. But if they are committing violence against you, do not aid and assist them so that they will be less violent, because that is just you consenting to your own enslavement.
But there is trouble brewing in the gallery.
Your choice is take the hat off or step outside.
The judge asked this man, Bo Davis, to remove his hat or leave. Otherwise, he could be charged with contempt of court. But Davis refuses.
So I have force threatened upon me if I were to wear a hat.
Davis and some others seated around him are associated with the New Hampshire-based anti-government movement. They're here to support a fellow member who's the defendant in a, quote, right to travel case that's in recess.
Stand up, please. Sir, treat others as you would wish to please. I'm being nice. Well, I'm not going to assist in my own arrest. I don't want you should take your hands off that man. Please stand up.
A second bailiff comes to help escort Davis out, but again, he refuses to stand.
I'm not going to assist in my own arrest.
You see that? I'm not going to assist in my own arrest. That's how you get arrested. Peaceful, lawful, non-compliant, just like the slave that got arrested. That's how you get arrested, if they're going to unlawfully arrest you. Now, let me explain something real quick. You can't wear a hat in a court, in any court. You can't wear a hat in the court of the executive, the court of the legislature, or in a judicial court or court of law. The only way that you can wear a hat in a court is if it's a crown and you are the king. This is long honored tradition and absolutely in law. As strange as it might sound, they had a lawful reason to arrest this man. This arrest was completely in law, and it pains me to say that. And the only reason he got arrested is because Americans are not educated, and ignorance of the law is no excuse unless you're a cop. And, you know, you're tasked with upholding and enforcing the law. Then you don't have to know the law, because the government would be way too liable if you did. he got arrested because of his own ignorance, because he didn't understand what was going on. And it was a lawful arrest. And I blame that completely on the lack of education we have and the lack of understanding people have about law. That's why I produce this YouTube channel. That's why I'm going to have a website set up where people can come and pay to learn law, because I am tired of being tired, and I'm tired of being broke, and I'm tired of having nothing and fighting for everybody else's rights, having nothing to show for it, and people just continue to act like people. The way people act these days, they require government. They need government. People who allow child rapists to walk in a society, who allow the accessory to the child rapist to walk in that society, who allow people to be locked up who are innocent and do nothing else besides possess a flower, while allowing the wicked to walk free. And whenever the people cause enough of a fuss for something to actually happen, the state does the bare minimum to satisfy the people, to stop the pitchforks and torches from coming out. Whenever people start blaming other people and talking about suing them for defamation because their ideas are challenged, their ideas and their work are challenged, people who profess how tyrannical the government is are willing to go and run to the government to enforce their own ideas and wrong beliefs with a government that only allows statutory gods, false idols, into their secular courts, and have expelled the rule of law and due process from their state courts, effectively enslaving everybody. And most people in society are okay with that, not willing to fight back, not willing to waste their time, and just try to avoid the trouble themselves. They require government. And those people don't just require government, but they are actively running towards a tyrannical government that's going to own all of their property. And they'll just have to be happy with what the government allows them to have. And if that's what you wish for your children and grandchildren, you're a sick individual. Don't assist in your own arrest unless you have actually broken the law. Then you should surrender. But people have to learn the law first.
Instead of dragging Davis out of the courtroom, the bailiffs use a wheelchair. So a short time later, the judge returned to the courtroom and sentenced Bo Davis to 5 days in jail for contempt of court.
Please step aside. I'm going in.
No, you're not going in.
Don't touch me.
You're not going in, sir.
Let the record show that you just battered me.
Step back.
And you're using...
Step back.
Question? Peter.
This is kind of the outcome of the stuff that we've been watching. And the submission that these sovereign citizens give to the court. Once they submit, it becomes lawful. Because if you agree to be charged with the court, if you agree to be a slave to your government, then no longer is it unlawful or illegal It's only when you don't consent that it's unlawful and illegal. He got tased. Let's see what happens.
Since charged with 3 counts of battery and 1 count of contempt of court. He would later enter an Alford plea, meaning he didn't admit to committing a crime, but acknowledged there was likely enough evidence to convict him. Jail time was waived as part of the plea deal, and he was ordered to pay a fine for his original charge of riding a bike at night without a light. Fast forward.
He basically went back to the court and said, okay, you whipped me enough, master. You whipped me hard enough, master. I am willing to say I did everything wrong for you to stop whipping me, because I'm just trying to show that the courts have become lawless and out of control. So please, the master, take it easy on me. And they still find him for riding a bicycle at night without a light. Let's see what happens in the marijuana charge.
To the next day, and she's about to face a new judge.
Keisha Johnson, 56.
This time Johnson's represented by an attorney.
I don't know how familiar you are with this, but this
I'm
case...
familiar. Podium flipper.
Okay.
I've heard a little bit about it from
Okay.
yesterday. All right, so this is Miss Johnson. We'll note that she's in custody today. She's brought over and present.
And she'd like to make a statement to the court.
I had time to think about it, and I believe and I've learned that I need to represent myself in a respectable manner while in front of the judge.
Okay, so obviously that behavior will not be tolerated. That's why you ended up where you are.
Keisha Johnson's found guilty of contempt of court and is released from jail after serving 1 day. On her original charges, 2 were dropped, but she's found guilty of possession of marijuana, fined $185.
Again, sorry, master. Sorry for questioning you and believing I was free, and that you guys had to do something like prove jurisdiction and give me due process of law. Sorry, master. Please take it easy on me. And they took it easy on her. They dropped 2 charges, $185 fine, because they know they got a willing slave again. She's willing to get back in the house and take care of the masters. These people, they didn't know true process of law. They didn't have real law in their heart. That's what was going on. That's why they submitted. And now, the government knows that they are their gods, and they'll submit any other time after that. And not only will they do that, but they'll go and tell all their friends that they should submit too, that they should be good slaves. They'll go and tell all their friends, oh, you better not run from the plantation. It's not good if you run from the plantation.
As for Jenna Vondran, who was arrested after filming in the courtroom,
all right, go ahead and lock her up.
She's found guilty of disorderly conduct and serves 1 day in jail.
Okay, this happens a lot when people get locked up. They typically, especially for recording in the courtroom, what's happening in the courtroom is so awful, they don't wish for recordings to get out. And you should know that if you've watched this channel, because recordings have gotten out. Yet nobody seems to really care, so I don't know why they care that much. But typically when they lock people up like that, it's for less than 72 hours, because that's how long they can lawfully lock people up to investigate a crime or to hold them while they're trying to produce enough evidence to actually charge them and get them in their custody. And they absolutely abuse this authority at this point. Again, these people might not be the smartest people. If you're going to record in court, don't let them know. Don't advertise. Don't do it on your cell phone unless it's in your front pocket pointing outwards and, you know, it's not going to be real obvious. And always have backups. But what do you think? Do you think people should be arrested and thrown in jail and tased for recording the courts? I mean, if they're so honorable, if they're so righteous, if they're not doing anything wrong and they are saints and angels, there really shouldn't be a problem. But I'd still like to know your thoughts. Do you think people should be tased and arrested just because they're stupid and they don't know how the process actually works? Do you think people should be ripped out of the courtroom and thrown into jail because they're wearing a hat because we don't know customs that are time immemorial, because we're not taught any of that stuff today? Do you really think that it's okay to throw people into jail violently over a plant when they have caused no harm, injury, and or loss? Please comment down below if YouTube will allow you to. Because they don't allow a lot of comments. Keep taking them down. Now, this last example I have is an example to show you due process. And even though he doesn't win, he doesn't lose either, and I'll tell you why he didn't win. Let's check it out.
Next, we're in Las Vegas, Nevada for an arraignment hearing.
City versus Joshua Martinez.
Joshua Martinez is representing himself after being charged for driving with a suspended license.
On the charge of having a suspended driver's license on April 12th. What is your plea, sir?
Just have a...
So keep that in mind. He's being charged with driving under a suspended license, the same that crazy drunk guy got charged with, and agent, person, not the person, agent, whatever he said, all of that nonsense, the different people he was talking, different persons he was talking about. He was charged with the same thing. The other kid that had to pay the fine, he was found guilty of and had to pay for riding his bicycle at night without a light. This guy driving without a license or under suspension, whatever. How does he plead? Let's see what he says.
A couple questions before we proceed. I don't understand the nature and cause of the charges.
Well, you're charged with driving on a suspended, canceled, or revoked driver's license.
You're charged with possession of marijuana, tampering with physical evidence, and possession of drug paraphernalia.
I don't understand any of that.
All right.
See, again, he starts off with the nature of the charges, nature and wrong of the charges. He does a decent job, but again, she's not accepting it because he can't explain it. He can't articulate it for the record. But it should have been effective in law 100 years ago. No doubt. Because we still had some semblance of law in the courtroom.
Well, you're charged with illegally possessing marijuana.
Illegally,
Okay. Is
not
there
unlawfully.
a sworn statement against me or injured party?
I believe you probably received a citation on April 12th. That would be the criminal complaint filed against you.
Okay. He asked for a sworn complaint. A sworn complaint from a third-party impartial witness. Basically, who from the public said that I was causing some type of disruption that an officer had to get involved and arrest me? And she said, a criminal complaint was filed against you, not charged against you. And just so that people don't get this twisted, she's going to talk about his charges here in a second, but she's not talking about the criminal complaint being a charge. What she's talking about is the municipality charging him a fine. You see the word game, play here going on just to confuse you. Because I understand what they're saying. I probably understand what judicial officers are saying in a lot of cases more than they actually understand what they're saying. And they are incredibly careful about what they say. Because they do know the law, unlike the rest of these people. But he's doing a really good job. Because this is process right here. Well, where's the accuser? Can't have a crime without an accuser. A cop might witness a policy violation, but he can't accuse me because I didn't commit a crime. And just because it's not illegal doesn't mean it's not criminal.
Okay, and is there a injured party or damage to property here?
It's charge brought by the city of Las Vegas, sir.
Okay, so the city's the victim in the case?
The city is the, yes,
Victim?
the charging.
So they're the victim.
Let's start here. Can you guys?
You see how she won't say that the city of Las Vegas is the victim? You want to know why? Because they're not a living entity. See, courts of law are made for living entities like man and woman. They're made so that man and woman can settle disputes amongst themselves. Civil courts are made for fictitious entities. She's saying a fictitious entity is charging you. They're sending you a bill. They're charging you a fine. They're giving you a citation, which is really just an invitation to pay them money for no apparent reason except for the fact that you don't actually know what due process of law is. But see, this gentleman is actually practicing due process of law, making it very difficult for him. So she's going to do what all of them do, and she's going to start using her contempt power to threaten him. Because that's how chicken and scared these people are of you, the public, actually finding out and understanding what true law is and freeing yourselves, your children, and your grandchildren.
Prove jurisdiction. Prove jurisdiction because I come in under common law. Prove your jurisdiction that you have jurisdiction over me. Prove jurisdiction. A court cannot proceed until you guys prove jurisdiction. Show me your jurisdiction. Show me your law.
All right. All of our laws are codified in the Kentucky Revised Statute.
Show me jurisdiction. Show me the law.
Let me explain this right here and why I put this in here. He says all of our laws are codified by the state of Kentucky, or codified statutes by the state of Kentucky. Guess what? Those aren't law. They have no effect on the judiciary in the state. In fact, the state judiciary is supposed to decide whether law is actually applied to that, how to apply the law to it, and whether it's even lawful for the legislature to create such an act. That's the judiciary's job. It's called separation of powers. See, the legislature cannot give the judiciary jurisdiction over anything because that would mean that there is no separation of powers. The judiciary have jurisdiction because of law. She just doesn't know how to place the elements of that upon the record, and the fact that they have not established the elements of jurisdiction upon the record, it all has to do with ignorance. It all has to do with a lack of knowledge. Should she be beat up and arrested and thrown in jail for that? Or maybe it's just because she's black. I don't know. They do it to white people too.
Here you go.
Okay, that doesn't prove that you have jurisdiction.
Okay, so what else? And now, there's a simple way for me to prove jurisdiction to you. I'm going to ask the deputy to go ahead and take you into custody.
Under what charges?
Under
what charges?
You are disrupting my court.
What is your plea on
If the
charge?
city
Mr.
is
Martinez,
the,
Mr.
if they are
Martinez,
the
today is your-
victim,
Mr.
I would like
Martinez,
to
I am in
move
charge
this
of
to a
this
federal
courtroom, and
court.
you're gonna stop
No,
it.
we are in charge of the courtroom.
Marshall, would you show Mr. Martinez the inside of our holding tank, please? You're not going to tell me who's in charge of my courtroom, Mr. Martinez. Go ahead and go with the marshal. That is direct contempt of court.
You are in contempt.
Martinez is temporarily removed from the courtroom. Then, about 20 minutes later, he's brought back in to be sentenced for his newly acquired contempt of court charge.
Okay, Mr. Martinez, since you have informed me that I am in contempt of court and that you are in fact in charge of this courtroom, I'm going to go ahead and sentence you today to direct contempt of court. I will give you an opportunity to apologize if you choose to do so and behave in a manner that I consider appropriate for a courtroom. Would you like to do that today, Mr. Martinez?
What would I be
It is a
apologizing?
yes or a no question.
What would I be apologizing
For
for?
your direct contempt of court, sir.
All I was asking was legal questions, ma'am.
I disagree, sir. I'm going to ask you the question one more time. Did you wish to apologize and proceed in a manner I consider appropriate in this courtroom or not? Okay. Direct contempt, I'm going to sentence him to 15 days in jail. Okay, thank you.
The Sixth Amendment grants me that.
Sir, I would suggest you stop speaking now.
Martinez would be jailed for 15 days for contempt of court. His original charge of driving without a license was later dismissed.
Okay. So, he was charged with driving without a license. He goes in there, he is performing due process. He slips up a little bit. You see the judicial officer will not admit that there's a victim. The judicial officer sees where he's going. Where Mr. Martinez messed up is he tried to usurp a court that did not belong to him. And when she held him in contempt, he threatened her with contempt. You have to be at peace with all mankind. And that's why she charged him and threw him in jail for 15 days for contempt of court, because in law, she has the power and authority to do that. You can't threaten a judicial officer. Now, the kid riding a bike at night without a headlight, and the other individual driving under suspension or whatever, both of them were charged, found guilty, I think the first guy actually had to serve time. But the other one got charged a fine for riding a bicycle without a flashlight. He drove a vehicle, he drove a car without a license. They didn't do anything. Nothing. They dropped it. Because he was moving under due process. And I've seen that happen multiple times. Within the past 2 years, they will never drop anything. They will drag you through the entire process. And then at the end of it, they'll make an order. I've yet to see them create a judgment, but they'll make an order that's not executable. And what they'll do is they'll order their state officers, because that's what they have jurisdiction and power to do. But I haven't seen them carry any of those things out. Yet. And the reason I'm saying yet is because we are so incredibly close to the government becoming tyrannical beyond anybody's imagination. And the moment they do that, they're going to go and execute all of those things that they haven't been able to execute yet. All of those unlawful proceedings that have happened in court that they know is against the law and they can't execute. And then, one by one, they're going to start dragging people in and taking away their property. It's all being set up. That's what the Great Reset's about. And this is basically our last opportunity. This is basically our last chance. God puts law in your heart. True law. The state writes false idols called statues or statutes. the source of law from any society is God. That's why the first part of the Bible, in the second book, God establishes that law with Moses. Because he figured that people would understand the law in their heart. He's like, okay, they're not listening to this. Maybe I should give them step-by-step instructions, and I'll send it to this man named Moses because he marched my people out of Egypt. And that has been fairly good law since the time it was written on the side of the mountain. And I say fairly good law because the laws were a little strange if you go and read all of them. It wasn't just 10 commandments. And most of them don't apply since the time of Christ. See, the Old Testament was kind of like the legislative branch of government. It established the law of the Creator, of the Father. When Christ came down, and the story of Jesus, that is basically the judicial review of the law from the Old Testament. And in my opinion, he was the greatest common law judge of all time. But he established the case law, or the law of the case, for how those laws were to be applied. Which is why nobody stoned the woman at the well for adultery that everybody caught in the act, because even though you had all of those witnesses, guess what you didn't have? You didn't have an accuser. Nobody walked away because they thought that they lived in a life of sin. Everybody walked away because they knew if they cast that stone and they weren't the accuser, they were committing sin. They were committing crimes against God. And if you believe it's okay to sit back and do nothing when lawyers, scribes, and Pharisees, lawyers, judges, legislatures, and executive branch defy the law of God, violate the law of God against his children, your brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, everybody in your family members. I could be a moron, but I don't know if God's really going to uphold the law for you. Anyways, we are Just Conspiracy. The next video is going to be on judicial officers breaking the law. And let me tell you something. They are much more atrocious with what they do than these sovereign citizens recording court and trying to believe in freedom even if they don't have a good and educated way of doing that. But without education and the basic knowledge of law getting around our society somewhat quickly, go ahead and hand over all of your property, everything that you hold dear and precious to you in your life, to the state, and ask them to govern you harder and make sure that they punish you better whenever you disobey them, because that is where we're headed. They are telling you this every single day. Agenda 2030, the Great Reset, you will own nothing and be happy. They are telling you this every time people go to court, families go to court, and they administrate the family without consent. They are telling you this every time they step in the middle of contracts and violate them. They are telling you this every time they allow child rapists to walk. They are telling you this every time that they have some famous person like Jussie Smollett or whatever that goes and reports false things, commits crimes, and they let him get away with it because of his personage. And then the public gets so upset that they demand him be charged and actually go through charges. And I don't know if you've noticed or not in these past couple of years, but the court has absolutely not done anything right unless the public watches over them and make sure they do so. So I implore you, especially if you live in Western North Carolina, to protect your own rights and show up for Allen and make sure that the courts do not absolutely run over him on February 17 of 2022. He has court in Buncombe County on February 10th. We're not asking for people to go there, but it would be courteous if people showed up, because they might try and take away his children for a year and charge him child support, charge him for the privilege of taking his children and not being allowed to see them or talk to them. I've been doing this for a lot of years. I've basically gotten nothing out of it. I am willing to teach people the law, but because the people that I've taught and I've saved their homes from the government coming and taking it, I've saved their properties from the government coming and taking it, I've saved them from having to pay undue fines and penalties to the government and tens of thousands of dollars, and they turn around and spit in my face. I'm setting up a website where people can pay for the information. And even though it's not exciting, it's not wondrous, I try to make the teachings as fun as I possibly can. But the real motivation for doing it is because if you don't do it and you don't understand the very basics of law, our Constitution is already destroyed. All actors of the government don't care about it. They all look for ways to explain it away, to justify the things they're doing. And nobody else really understands what's going on because they don't have law degrees. And I don't have a law degree, but I challenge any attorney, judge, legislature, Supreme Court justice. If you wish to have a debate about law, let's do it. Because people will see when we debate law who is correct and who is incorrect. And that is exactly why they don't allow debates between professional doctors who believe in the vaccine and the ones who don't. That's why that happens. And when they start shutting down free speech for people in the profession of their concern, it doesn't take long after that before you are living in a tyrannical government. And the real fact is everybody's living in a tyrannical government right now. They just don't know it because they were born into it, and they don't know what's actually happening. Which is why people like Anna Von Rice, Ride Class, John Paul Hansen, and others can travel and have people pay them lots of money to come give seminars, buy their products on how you create a black passport, and the government's never going to mess with you because none of it works. I try to give people the real answer, but the truth is difficult. Wake up, go to sleep, save your children's future, destroy it. We all have free will. God put it on your heart. We are just conspiracy, and we just wish to conspire with other good people of this planet to bring heaven down to earth and restore the kingdom of heaven on earth to its rightful creator. One world, love, and peace.